Hi, my name is Stephen Sindoni. Thank you for tuning into our broadcast today of Pennies from Heaven. Our movie is based on a true story. It is my own personal story about spirituality. It is my hope that after watching this movie that you too will be able to tap into your spirituality, allowing you to tap into ascended masters, elementals, and the spirit realm. Some people would call it an aha moment. I call it the awakening. The best analogy that I can use would be some people are on regular TV, some are on satellite, some are on cable. I myself have got a free subscription to Universal TV. Our story begins in Lake Shasta, California. I was sitting at a lake when I received a phone call. The phone call was from a friend. His name was Michael. Michael shared with me information regarding an object that it was necessary that I go to seek out to find. Michael wouldn't tell me what the object was, only that, for some strange reason, he was supposed to call me because it was supposed to mean something to me, some sort of a symbol, something that I would understand. After thanking Michael, my friends and I got into our vehicle, loaded our camera equipment up, and headed south to Dunsmuir. After getting off at the Dunsmuir exit, we headed down Dunsmuir Avenue a short way, turned right under the Shasta Retreat Archway onto Scarlet Way, and then parked our vehicle by the river by the train station. Dunsmuir was an old river town. It was an old railroad town, and it was there we saw the nostalgia of the old 1920s and 1930s trains, and we waited patiently as the Dunsmuir Railroad train began to pass by. And once the train had passed, we headed towards the incline into the wooded area in search for the mysterious object. After surveying the wooded area and looking for strange markings, carvings, I came upon the object in question. It was a cross. It was a cross that was on a basalt rock formation 3 feet from the ground, just as Michael had instructed me and told me where I would find it. I was guided to the cross. I was given a sign. I now received a symbol. The symbol did mean something to me. It told me that trust your faith and listen to the guidance, because the spiritual path that you were on and you are seeking is the one that'll lead you to the kingdom. And so it was when I found that statue. It's hard for some to understand the spiritual path, and I think by now watching the footage that I will share with you now to understand more of the inner makings of this man, you'll better comprehend what I'm trying to share with you in Pennies from Heaven. And here is where our story begins.
Stephen, when and where were you born?
I was born in Brooklyn, New York, March 19th, 1953, and makes me a Pisces in the third decan of Pisces, and I was born in Caledonian Hospital in Brooklyn, Chile, Italian and Scottish parentage.
Can you tell us about your early experiences with a religion or spirituality?
Well, it happened after my grandfather passed away. When my grandfather passed away, I took it very hard, and a number of years later, I started to feel that I was sensing things and knowing things, and I was guided to things, and
all of a sudden I started to get things from people that supposedly were on the other side of the veil. But they were family members, so I trusted what I was getting. And I realized that there was more to our existence than most people even realized.
So you were hearing voices or feeling energy?
I was basically getting things in an auditory way, and then getting symbology to whatever it was, and then being led to certain places. And a lot of people would say if they were a detective, I got a hunch. Well, tell me what it means by getting a hunch or a feeling or a woman's intuition. So basically, it started out just listening to the inner voice from within, and then later identifying with what it is I was supposed to connect with, and then I got the validation. And then I started trusting what I was getting intuitively.
And how old were you when that started to happen?
That started happening when I was about 8 or 9 years old. I had a near-death experience, and I was hit by an automobile, and I was in a coma, and I woke up in vomit. I was didn't know where I was, and I had the priest over my bed. My mother and father were there, and they weren't sure if I was going to live. And when I came out of it, the priest said, you know, you're lucky to be here. The doctors say it's a miracle. And I had experienced going through that tunnel. And I was told that it's not time. You need to go back. And I kept it to myself because at a young age, who was going to believe an 8 or 9-year-old child about what he just experienced? But from that point forward, I just felt there was a change taking place, like a metamorphosis.
How old were you when your grandfather died?
Not long after. He died when I was about 11 or 12, and we were supposed to, my grandfather was supposed, him and I were supposed to take a trip to Italy, and about 6 months before the trip, he died of emphysema. And I took it very badly because he had 11 children, about 31 grandchildren, but everybody wanted to know why little Stephen was so special. So him and I had a connection that he didn't have with any of his children. We had a bond between us, and as a result of that, when he passed, I took it pretty hard, and then what I got was, I'm going to be with you. And at first I didn't understand what that meant because I was hearing it intuitively, but later on through the years, I got more and more awareness that my grandfather at certain times would come to me and share things with me.
Is he still with you? Do you still get messages from him?
Now and then I do. One of the most vivid ones I got from him was when I was working in New York for an air conditioning company, and I was to go to the office to get my car that day. I left it at the lot for the weekend, and at 6 o'clock in the morning I was awakened by his voice and the smell of his Lucky Strike cigarette. And I looked around the room. There was a haze of the smoke in the room, and I heard him say, Stevie, don't take the car this morning, because if you do, you're going to get killed. I looked around. I said, Papa, and I panned the room and didn't see him. I still smell the vivid smell of Lucky Strike cigarettes, because I used to light his cigarettes as a kid for him on the stove and hand them to him, so I knew what a Lucky Strike cigarette smelled like. Went to work that morning, and my boss had borrowed my car that morning, and he was like white as a ghost. He took the car, tried to go over the 59th Street Bridge, lost the brakes, and almost got killed, and told me, if you take that car, you're going to die today. Here's a $100 bill. Go to any of your sales calls, but you're not getting in that vehicle today. And I realized that my grandfather was giving me a warning from the other side.
Do you still get messages from people, and who are they?
Well, most recently, I'll share my brother. My brother had passed away, and when my brother passed away, he had come to me letting me know that he was okay. He came with my grandmother and grandfather, who received him at the gate, so to speak, and he told me he was going through the bardo, and that's a process to like get acclimated to the other side for the work that you have to do. And he showed me that he was about 23 years old. I saw him in the image he was, and he says, I'm not sickly, I'm healthy, and I want to thank you. And he let me off the hook. He said, Stephen, he said, you did all you could do. You came from California. You made me famous while I was alive. And what he meant was I wrote a screenplay, And in the screenplay, he was in my movie, and at the end of the movie, he became the President of the United States. And in the hospital, while I was writing the screenplay, I put up a YouTube movie, and the doctors and the nurses in the hospital got to see it. And everybody in the hospital, before my brother died, was calling my brother Mr. President. So I made the last year of his life a very, very good one.
Can you tell us about your friend Kenny?
Yes, in 2009, I came back up to Mount Shasta. I met a man named Kenny. I was lecturing at the COS College of the Siskiyous, and at that point I was invited to lecture somewhere else, and I did, and I met this woman named Laverne who said, I don't know why I'm supposed to do this, but I'm supposed to take you to meet a man named Kenny. Now, Laverne was an 86-year-old woman, and she says, Kenny's about my age, would you come with me to meet this man? So I said, not a problem. So the following day I called her up, and I met her in town, and she took me to meet a man named Kenny, and he was living in a senior citizens development in Mount Shasta near the hospital. As we got there, Kenny answered the door, and he greeted both of us. We sat in his living room, and he sat in his chair, and we sat on the couch. And he said, Stephen, I want you to sit in front of me. So Laverne positioned the chair in front of him so that way he could see me better, because one of his eyes, he lost the vision of one of his eyes while he was working as a stuntman for Robert Conrad in the Wild Wild West TV show. He was an actor in Hollywood and in his previous years, but he had a very bad accident while he was on the set doing a stunt, riding past some flames in a barn, and he lost the sight of one of his eyes. So he showed me some of his photos of his life. He worked on a assembly line with Marilyn Monroe. They worked on the second shift before she was discovered in that drugstore in Hollywood. So he had a relationship with her before she became famous, and told me some intimate details that only someone could know if he was involved with that individual, which I find kind of impressive. But he was a spiritual and magical man who had spent probably about 20 years up with the Elizabeth Clare Prophet group in Montana, and came down with Bruce, who owns the Soul Connection in Mount Shasta, to live in Mount Shasta, because he got the call to come to Mount Shasta.
So what happened to Kenny exactly?
Well, upon hearing his story, Laverne said to Kenny, okay, do you know who Stephen is? So Kenny looked at me and then looked to his right and says, let me ask my angels, Edwin and Johnny. So I look over to my left, and I don't see anybody where he's looking. Turns back to me, he says, they tell me that you're my brother from Lemuria. So now the hair on my neck is standing up, because I didn't know I was going to get this sort of an answer. So I said, can you tell me what my name was? He says, well, you were my older brother in Lemuria. You were a shaman, and your name was Randu. So I said, what was your name, Kenny? He says, you promised not to laugh. I said, no, I'm not going to laugh. He says, my name was Kandu. You were Randu, and I was Kandu, but you were my older brother. So he said, the reason why I came to Shasta, though, is because I want to ascend, but I wanted to go into the mountain. And I have been in contact with the Dhamma, the high priest. Last year I was very sick, and I was almost at death's door. And the Dhamma asked me if I wanted to come in. And he said, no, I wanted to go in with my brother. I was waiting for you. So at this point, I'm listening to the story and trying to figure out, you know, is this happening? I'm hearing this story. This is a interesting, you know, story that I'm getting. So he said to me, in August, I'm waiting for another group of people to come. In August, you and I are supposed to go to Panther Meadow together. And we'll be greeted when we get there. All of a sudden, he says, standing behind you is Adama, Saint Germain, and Jesus. At that point, I was like blown away, because I look behind me, I don't see these figures, but I'm sensing the energy. And this was the third time since migrating from Washington State to Oregon to California that I heard that Saint Germain was behind my shoulder. And so now it's really got my attention, because 3 different people 3 unrelated incidents are telling me they see spiritual ascended masters that are with me. So now I start to see Kenny on a regular basis. I says, Kenny, I'll bring you lunch. What would you like? He goes, bring me a chocolate shake. So every other day I would go over and bring him a chocolate shake. We'd hang out. And he said to me, he said, you're going to find what you're looking for, but you've got some work to do. And he hands me a book, and it's Aurelia Louise Jones's book about the 7 sacred flames. And the book talked about raising your vibration, your spirituality. He says you need to do the work before you can enter the kingdom, so to speak. And I didn't understand what he meant by that, because I was on a spiritual path, but I wasn't doing the everyday work. And he says, it's time now that you do the everyday work. So I started praying with him. And then 4 days after that, I went to go visit him. I brought him his chocolate shake, and we're there. And we're at the end of our meeting there. My friend asked Kenny about his magic wallet. And there were times where he was with other people where they would go to a gas station and they needed to fill up, and he'd open up his wallet and mysteriously $100 bills would appear. He was able to manifest money. So my friend says, well, can you do that for me? She says, well, you got to do the spiritual work. Anybody can do it, but you got to do the work. So now I'm interested. Hey, I'd love to have a magic wallet. So he says, I'm going to give you a penny, Stephen. Hold on to this penny. You're probably going to lose it, but when you think of me, a penny will appear. You meditate. So I kind of like put the penny in my pocket, and I really wasn't really sure about this yet. At the end of our talk, he says, let's all meditate. We put our arms on everybody's shoulder. And at the end of the prayer, all of a sudden my arm started to raise 2 feet above my head. Kenny began levitating off the ground. We all lost our balance. I had to bring him back to the ground. And he said, thank you, Stephen. He goes, I was going to ascend there. Thank you for bringing me back to the ground. You realized I was levitating. So obviously, the 3 of us realized what had happened. I told the female who I was with, please, in confidence, do not tell anybody what just happened here. I said, because this would be hard for anyone to believe without actually seeing it. And even seeing it on TV, you think it's a magical trick if it happens. So sometimes seeing is not believing. 2 days later, I decided I was going to go up to Ashland and visit a friend up in Ashland. The morning that I decided to go up to Ashland, Oregon for the day, I went to his door first, and there was 2 days worth of mail there in front of his door. And I knocked on it. Nobody answered, and I couldn't figure out what happened to him. So I went over to the Soul Connection to talk to Bruce, who was a good friend of his, and he told me that the night before he had fell down and was taken to the hospital in an emergency situation, and that he broke some ribs. So I wanted to go see him, and Bruce says, well, he should be all right. When are you coming back from Ashland? I said, I'll be back tomorrow afternoon. He says, well, just visit him tomorrow afternoon. He'll be all right. So I went up to Ashland for the day, and I get a phone call from one of my friends who told me that he had passed away early in that next morning before I came back. And when I got the word, I was upset about it, because I just met this friend in an unbelievable situation, and there was so much yet for me to learn. And I'm in the bathroom, and I excused myself from the group of people I was with after I took the phone call, just to get my composure. So I was in the bathroom, and I was drying my eyes, for lack of a better, letting you know I was upset by it. And then I heard Kenny in my head tell me, Stephen, go out to the car and go get the prayer book and open it up. So I went to the car, got the prayer book, and I came back and I sat down outside the house there in Ashland. And as I did, this is what I heard him say in my head. He said, Stephen, I'm sorry that our time together was short. I am now on the other side, as you now know. I will be in angel training for a week. I am going to loan you Edwin and Johnny for the week. And when I'm done with my training, I'll always be with you when you need me, my brother. So I listened to that, and he said, now read a certain excerpt from the book, and I did. I read it out loud. My friend was there, and we read it. So he said, I'm going to give you a sign, and that this is real, because I was questioning, Kenny, is this really, in my head I'm questioning. So a friend of mine had to stop in Wairika. She had an appointment to the beauty parlor. So while she was in Wairika getting her hair done, I was outside just walking around town. As I walked, I got guided to go walk 30 paces from where I was from. And when I walked there, I found a new penny. The signal to me was, I'm going to leave you a symbol, and that was another penny, because he had given me a penny before that while he was alive. So that was his way of letting me know that pennies from heaven. So I picked up the penny and I put it in my pocket. Well, after that, after the next week or so, at approximately 3 o'clock in the morning, I was awoken by him every night telling me to prepare myself to go up to the mountain, to St. Germain's Rock. So at that point, I realized that he was coming every day wanting me to prepare myself to go up the mountain. So as per what he was telling me, I said, okay, I'll do it, but stop waking me up at 3 o'clock in the morning. He says, okay, but just do what I'm asking. So a friend and I went up to the mountain, to the rock where he told me to go to. As soon as I got to the rock, I fell fast asleep, and I had a interdimensional experience where I was able to see Kenny within the mountain. And when I came down from the mountain, taking off my hiking boots, there was a penny in my shoe.
So, Stephen, would you say you were spiritually guided by Kenny to come to Mount Shasta to do this?
Yes, absolutely. I feel like I was guided by Kenny, and I asked him for validation while I was here. And yesterday morning in front of our cabin, there were 3 pennies in a formation of a pyramid that some of the crew members was able to see. That was validation for me that Kenny is with us as I speak as well.
In closing, I would like to thank you for coming along on this spiritual journey. It is my hope that Pennies from Heaven will help you to further expand and explore your spiritual awareness, so that way you too may be able to tap into the divine guidance that resides in each and every one of us.